Why do we do these talks? Why is it so important for me to teach, first of all? Why is it so important for us to talk with so many different schools, so many different people? It's because of this. We are honored to be in a position in our lives where we can contribute to art. We're all part of the same thing now. The internet has made it so that no longer are we so much grouped by the countries we live in. We are much more grouped now by our thinking, And if I don't share what we learned over these years, then I'm not helping art to progress. If I just learn everything and I keep it secret, then I don't help art to go further. So hopefully, when you guys get to that level as well, you will do the same. Because if we all do this and help each other, it'll be a beautiful place. Okay? So that's the first thing I want you guys to keep in mind. Now, if I could go back in time, if I could go back to the teenage version of me, and I could tell myself anything, I would tell myself this: the most important skill in being an artist and being just a person in general is the ability to visualize. Okay? Visualize. So that means that we visualize the drawing before we draw it. This is very true. We try to see the movie before we start working on it. I have a broken TV on top of my desk. It doesn't work. It's always off. Okay? I look at that TV. In the very beginning of this movie, I looked at that TV for about 20 minutes. There's nothing on it. It's because I'm trying to visualize what this Tim Burton movie would look like. Does that make sense? Why on black TV? Have you ever been in a room where you look to a corner, you think you see a person, but there's nobody there? It's just a chair with maybe a coat, maybe a soccer ball underneath the coat, and you just think, oh, that's a person. And then you look over, oh, it's not. Why does that happen to us so much more at night than in the day? It's because at night, we only see little bits of information, okay? And then our brains will automatically take those little bits of information and fill in the gaps, and fill in the rest, and say, okay, I see this, I see this, I see this. It's a person, right? We all have this ability. Our brain is like a muscle. You have to work it out all the time to make it strong. If you don't, then you have tiny little muscles and you can't really do much with it. Visualizing is the biggest, strongest muscle that you can build in your brain. You can really visualize just before you fall asleep. You know you're going to fall asleep when you start to visualize colors, when you start to visualize things very clearly. You know what I'm talking about? Yes? We can use this. Why is Kei painting on something that's not white? Because if it's a white piece of paper, you guys ever have this happen to you, where you're drawing on a white piece of paper, you draw one line, you draw two lines, you draw three lines, and all of a sudden that amazing idea, that $1 million idea that you had in your head starts to disappear very quickly. And you're just looking at these lines and going, now what do I do? Right? That's because the white and the black, there's so much contrast. You can see so much clear difference it makes it very hard to imagine anything else except for those lines anymore. So you try this at home. Start off with a darker background and start to paint. A lot of times the screen's here, I'll look over here and I'm painting over here. It's because I don't want too much information here. All the information is in my brain and I can see it better over here where nothing is happening than over here. I'll draw it down, and then I'll look at it and try to see the image that I was seeing over here. A lot of times we are much better artists than we think we are, but it's just because we draw the wrong things at the wrong time in the wrong order. It makes things very difficult. You know, it's like if I try to draw something starting from the fingernail, and then I go to my shoe, and then I go to some hair, and then I try to fill in everything else, of course, that's going to be very hard. You know, so being able to adjust your thinking a little bit, a lot of times that's all we need, and we become much better artists, just like this. So try that, you know, try the darker starting, and then paint on top of that and see how it goes. It'll be a lot easier, trust me. Now visualizing, how do you visualize? I remember thinking that to myself when I didn't know how to visualize. Because it's hard. That is the hardest skill to learn. Everything that you learn in art, it all revolves around visualizing. For example, you look at something, you judge it, you're thinking in a way where you're thinking, how dark is that? Right? That's one way of thinking. Another way of thinking is, you see an angle, and you go, what angle is that? Right? That's another way of thinking. You learn about muscles so that you can draw people. So you can understand what's happening underneath the skin, underneath the clothes. All that information is to help you visualize better. So try to practice visualizing whatever you're going to paint, whatever you're going to draw, before you actually draw it. Try to visualize it. It's an exercise, okay? I'm giving you guys all homework. Next time you draw, okay? Also, visualizing plays a huge part in the business side of things. One of the biggest questions that I get all the time is, how do you price your art, right? A lot of us in the beginning, we don't know. We don't know how to price our art, how much our art is worth. Well, the old way that I was taught was, you think about how much you want to make per hour, and then you times it by how many hours you think it'll take you to finish the painting. So if I want to get paid, say, $30 an hour, and I think it will take me 8 hours to finish the painting, then I charge $240, right? Does this make sense? No, but that's not the way, okay? Our way is thinking, how much is that person's budget? How much money does that person have to do this project? And this is why. Because when you start to deal with big projects, like $100 million movies, and you only charge, say the person has a budget of $100,000 for you to make the artwork for this movie, and you tell them, I'm going to charge you $10,000. Okay, if the project goes wrong, who's going to be wrong? Is it going to be you, or is it going to be the person that hired you? It's going to be the person that hired you, because the person above that person is going to go, why did you hire this person? This person is obviously a beginner. He's only charging you $10,000. We have $100,000 to make the artwork for this. You know? So that's visualizing from the point of view of that other person. And when you're talking business to people, when you're talking to your employers, your clients, you want to always think in their perspective. That is very important, to visualize how they see you and how it is in their shoes. Okay? Because if you do, then it's much easier for you to get your point across. Right? If you have this great idea, but nobody else can see it, that doesn't do any good. So all these different points of view, the most important point of view is everybody else's. Yours is the least important. Because if you can't communicate your ideas, and you are the only one with the correct point of view, that's not going to do anything. Okay, so for example, when one time I was hired or I was asked to come in, I was asked to bring my portfolio. And at this time, nobody really asked me to bring my portfolio. So to me, thinking in that person's point of view, it seemed like, oh, that person doesn't really know who I am. So then my price goes lower. When I go in, they start looking through the portfolio, and they start to see, oh, yeah, he stops and he looks at a painting. And that painting, I won a master award, for, and I see the book that I'm in on his shelf. So then my price goes up. He looks at some stuff and he might look like this or whatever, and I know that's not exactly what he wants, then my price goes down. And every time, it's like, as I'm talking